Welcome to ABA on Tap, where our goal is to find the best recipe to brew the smoothest, coldest, and best tasting ABA around. I'm Dan Lowry with Mike Rubio, and join us on our journey as we look back into the ingredients to form the best concoction of ABA on tap. In this podcast, we will talk about the history of the ABA brew, how much to consume to achieve the optimum buzz while not getting too drunk, and the recommended pairings to bring to the table. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and always analyze responsibly.
All right. Welcome back to another installment of ABA on Tap. I am your grateful co-host, Mike Rubio, and this is part 2 with Matt Tapia. Enjoy.
So let's take it to a more relatable example to people.
Thank you for that little break.
That doesn't affect me as much, but let's say airplane riding. How would you use ACT? So a lot of people have phobias of airplanes. Don't really have control. Once you're on the airplane, you don't have control over what's going to happen. With you put trust in the maintenance, the pilot, whatever. Can you talk about maybe using ACT for people that are getting anxiety about being on an airplane?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. So first, there's a lot of things you can do with that. I think my mind goes immediately to exposure therapy, graduate exposure. So ACT really works well with graduate exposure. You can gradually, or desensitization, you can gradually introduce, stimuli that relate to or similar to the airplane ride. For example, like I might say, okay, let's watch some airplane rides and let's do a POV video of someone getting onto an airplane. You can watch that. How is rate your anxiety in that moment? So like we use like SUD, subjective units of distress scale, like 1 to 100. Where's your anxiety at? Is it 100 up here? Is it down here? Are you about to have a panic attack, or are you perfectly calm as a cucumber? So I would start there. Let's get comfortable with planes. Let's get familiar with planes. Then this is kind of hard to do though, because I'm thinking you have to buy a airplane ticket to get onto an actual airplane, and you can't just get off when you want to. I would be like, if I could, I'd be like, okay, let's go on the airplane. Okay, let's get off. Let's sit on there for a minute and then not actually take off, and then work up our way to actually flying on an airplane. But with, I'm sure they have airplane museums. I might do that. Like, okay, let's meet in an airplane museum, pretend like we're sitting on the airplane and imagine we're going somewhere, or like a pretend plane, that one that's not going to take off. So gradually exposing it to them and having them accept, okay, let's tact your emotions in this moment. How are you feeling? Scale 1 to 10. I hate that question because how you're feeling is probably the worst question you can ask in therapy. Okay. Hollywood makes fun of therapists for doing it all the time. How does that make you feel? Like, it's the worst question you can ask someone. But I would say, okay, put your anxiety on the scale here. Maybe do that. Give it a number. Okay, let's tact it. Okay, so but things like that. Okay, tell me. Okay, here's a better question to ask. Where do you feel that in your body? There we go. That's a good question. What does that feel like? So where's that anxiety showing up in your body right now? Okay. Could you put a shape to it, a color to it? Tell me about that. What's it? And then, okay, what kind of thoughts are coming up? What's your mind telling you now? It's telling me to get off the plane. Okay, the plane's going to crash. Okay, let's try this diffusion. Okay, let's practice that. I'm having the thought that this plane's going to crash. I'm having the thought that I could die right now. Okay, it's a scary thought, but I'm happy. It's a thought. It's words. Now write it down and hold it with you. So we're doing the diffusion strategies. We're doing graduate exposure there. This is the things I would do. We're going to do acceptance of emotions and thoughts. We are going to, and then also look at our values. So why is this important for us to get on this airplane? What are the reasons for it? What's your why? Oh, I'm going to go visit my family. It's really important that I visit them on Christmas Eve. Oh, okay. So maybe that's more important than your fear of flying. Maybe it's more important than the thoughts.
That's cool. That is cool.
Yeah. I really appreciate you breaking. Can you hear us okay, Matt? I think your screen froze.
You're back.
Oh,
there we go.
We froze a little bit. Thanks for sticking with us. That was great.
That was
no problem.
What I don't want to do is just use buzzwords, like you talked about with Ascent, right? And say, oh, well, now we know.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you breaking it down. I think it'll really help the audience understand that. Thank you for doing that.
Of course. Yeah. I feel like it's really important because I think the way it gets talked about a lot is very intellectually. And I'm trying to break it down into like actual examples, like how we can actually use it. Yeah, so I want it to be easily understood.
That was great. That was great in terms of like you're almost establishing a motivating operation for yourself and going through that process and the way you described it and saying, this is the way I feel. And then what's my motivation to overcome that? And that was really cool. I don't think anybody's ever explained it to me in an example that resonated as well as that. So thank you for taking that time. That's super cool.
Of course, yeah.
I wanted to follow up on something you said earlier. If you did you have something to follow up on? Sorry. So you talked about ABA being abuse, and I agree that there are certain things that we have done that have been abusive. I think it's interesting because it is abuse from two parties that were probably both looking out for what they thought was best for their children. It was the parents who wanted to get whatever was best for their child, and an organization that I'm hoping at the end was doing the best they thought they could do at the time. Now, clearly, like you said, I as well look back and I'm like, oh, I waited an hour and a half for a kid to eat a strawberry. I forced kids to put their shoes on, and like, I'm very much not happy. And that certainly would be abuse. So my question is, how do you think that came about? How did two people with great intentions end up maybe unintentionally committing abuse? What can be done about it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to rigidity in thinking, like this idea of cognitive dissonance, this over adherence, rule governed behavior, like, oh, they're the supervisor, they have the credentials, right? Therefore, I should follow what they say. At least that's what it was like for me.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. I need to follow what they say. I think a lot of it is too at least from my perspective, it's like, okay, I'm getting taught this in class. This professor sounds really good. Like they know their stuff. They've been through it. I trust them because they know they have, it's the subscription, like authority, right? We're going to go with authority rather than always data, like I think data is great, but if you subscribe to like authority, which we did a lot in ABA, there's people in the field we look up to and, oh, they said this, therefore I should do it this way. It can be really difficult when we're presented with contrary evidence to accept that. And so I think practicing psychological flexibility can really help because one of the skills is this idea of, kind of diffusion, but also values, committed actions. You got all of them work together, all of these different processes. Self as context is one of them that helps you with basically flexible perspective taking. So it allows you to hold two opposing, practicing the skill of holding two opposing values or two opposing ideas. This could be right, but this could also be right together. Instead of being so rigid to rule governed behaviors is a big part of it. I think in school when I was studying ABA, I drank the Kool-Aid. Like I said, I really drank the Kool-Aid to the point where like, no, this is what the research says. People would argue with me. I'm like, this is what the research says, right? And that's yeah, there's data there, but I mean, like, yes, it works, but to what end does it work, right? Like, oh yeah, eventually the kid's going to eat it, or eventually we're going to have our shoes on, but to what end? Is it really worth causing all this emotional distress and possibly trauma, if you want to call it that, but just this possible, the severe emotional distress that will later evoke even more emotional like behaviors, like whatever you see, tantrums, aggression, self-SID, you name it.
So a lot of the appeal to the authority, the Alex Trebek fallacy, right? The appeal to the authority one.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you two more hypotheses. Let me know your thoughts on them. Take one, either, or both. One being the conflicting motives. So I think as with capitalism, as ABA started to grow, motives for a lot of companies became the billable hour over innovation because innovation didn't pay. And in fact, innovation could be costly. So it was a lot of it was just like, go bill your hours. All of our meetings are going to be talking about how you can bill more hours, not talking about how you can do better service. That's one potential reason. Another potential thought, and we did an episode on this as well, is the medical model versus the social model. So the medical model being there's something wrong with this person or something that needs to be fixed. Medical insurance funding, ABA. So parents would come in and my child does this, and this. This needs to be fixed. Versus the social model of how do we adapt like environments to better facilitate this individual's behaviors so that we can really help their strengths and their weaknesses. I think both of those potentially contributed to what led to abuse. I don't know if you have any thoughts about either or both of those.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a lot. I think, no, you're spot on there. I didn't want to bring it up because I don't want to cure the wrath of the companies. But yeah, no, you're exactly right. I'm glad you brought it up, though. No, yeah, there's definitely an emphasis on billable hours. And even this false idea sold to us like, okay, if you're doing more billable hours, you're doing better therapy, right? That's the argument. Like, just to try to get a connect, you're doing more hours, you're doing your job. If you're doing less hours, you're not really doing your job. You're not doing therapy. Or at least billable hours. Billable hours are the ones that really, matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a big part of it, definitely. I think, and you're right. Sometimes innovation is costly actually, and it doesn't align with profit, right? There's a misalignment in values there, So that could definitely, that's definitely a contributing factor for sure, absolutely. And it's tricky because a lot of companies are really good at selling ideas to clinicians of like, but you're still making a difference. But we also have to be, fiscally responsible and keep the lights on and all that.
And those things are true.
Especially for,
yeah, I mean, those things are true. You do need to run a profitable business to keep the lights on. And then that becomes your main motivating operation. Now you're not doing ABA, you're keeping the lights on. And that's a big difference. I mean, hopefully, you can. I'm not sure what kind of ABA you do in the dark, but to that point, I think that's the important part. There is that's where things get lost, and it is very nuanced. It's not like yes, you have to have a successful business, and then
you do.
If that is your focus day to day with clinicians, what I was going to say is our inaugural episode was the 40-hour Lovas thing, right? And people pitched that. They marketed that at first. And then the new research came out at 25 hours and people marketed that. Now, if you're doing Medi-Cal services, the 30-hour mark seems like the nice niche. So it's like at some point you have to realize you're pitching this research because it's good for your pocketbook, not because the research is solid by itself. And again, I'm not trying to be overly critical either. We have to preach this and then
trying to be overly critical.
We put our money where our mouth is and now we're doing it. So the idea that we can feel confident that our RBTs feel very well supported, that we're small too. So I'm able to text them every morning. Hey, just checking in. I know you got this and that. Let me know what's up. I can't be there today, or I am going to be there today. I'm actually going to be a little early. I'm going to be running a few minutes after you based on this. All those things that then now make the billable hours more likely to deliver a quality service, not just doing the hours for the sake of. And that's a big difference. That's a big difference when you're an RBT and it's like, I just took on this sub case today and I don't know this kid and they're just expecting me to fill the hours so that I can, meet my quota versus, I'm subbing today and the supervisor's there and they already told me that they're going to run the first part of the session so I can watch them and then they're going to hand it over to me and we're going to have a quality substitute situation where somebody came in to bridge that gap and now we're not just doing it for the sake of billable hours. And I can think of a million other scenarios where that's a really qualified, very experienced RBT. Yes, they are capable of going out there by themselves to pick up those billable hours, and maybe they're just going to build rapport with the child today, but we keep the service constant. There's a continuity of care, and that is good. Again, there's a lot of nuance there. That's okay, I think. But this idea that we're just hitting the mark for the sake of hitting the mark, I think is what you're talking about. And that means that you can just be killing time and filling billable hours. It doesn't mean you're doing anything good.
It's funny how the numbers are always so round too. 40, 30, 25. Yeah. It's never like 22.7 hours. They're always these nice round numbers.
It's almost like somebody started with a hypothesis and then wait, that's the way research works.
Works. And then we stuck to the hypothesis. We found the hypothesis correct.
Right. Imagine that. Oh, man.
Any thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with a lot of you guys. Yeah, I think so. I wanted to talk. So I think you're right. There's a lot of nuance there. A lot of nuance, right? And I think it's really on. I was going to say, what's the term? It's on the company, as the people at the top modeling the values that you want the actions of your employees to do. So like. Companies have like mission statements. They have these values. You have these pillars. They all focus on, right? But how are we actually like putting in those into action? How are we modeling that for our employees?
Yeah.
Right. And so we have to be, we're not just looking at numbers all the time, but we also have to look at, okay, we have to look at the notes. Okay, we have to look at what was actually done with the data. What was actually done during the session? Was the sub just sitting there with the kid, not running programs? Maybe they were running programs, but they were running only one or two? There's a lot of nuance there. Yes. Yeah. And I think we just have to make sure that we're living those values, that we're in alignment with those values, the company's values, the organization's values, that we're able to understand what that looks like in practice, not just words, but actually see, okay, that's that value done in action. So like, I'm trying to pick a value out of my hat here. Let's call it integrity, right? Well, what does that actually look like?
Yep.
Let's put examples, non-examples, right? Okay, this looks like us billing hours we were there at this time to this time. We're not going to add 5 minutes because we weren't there, or maybe the kid wasn't there. And at the same time, also, we're going to build with integrity that we're also going to do work, interventions. We're actually going to do what we think is best for the kid in that time, and not just, we're just going to focus on the numbers here and not, provide the actual treatment that's effective and that's, we know is going to be helping this, effective treatment. So.
See, I mean, how much nuance there is there? Because unless we have a person in there, this sub or this idea, there's no way we have a chance to deliver that.
Yep.
But if we just send the person blindly, there's also very little chance that we're going to deliver something good. Oh, man, it's not easy. It really isn't easy. Not. And you have to keep the lights on all the while.
Yeah, I'm glad that you did, Mike. And I wasn't glad in the beginning, but I've come to.
I see how it is.
So much of what Mike does
is breaking news here on ABA on Tap.
Says stuff, and I'm like, no. And then like 6 months later, I'm like, okay, Mike was very right about that.
You were right.
Was innovation, right? When we were doing our values, Mike and I have been huge on innovation ever for our 15-year career.
Let me interject. Okay. What that means is I never do the things that are written down in the textbook. I always have to do it differently. I think you have that problem too, sir. Yeah.
So I've gotten Mike in probably more trouble than he would care to admit with bosses.
Yes.
But he is the walking embodiment of innovation.
Oh, sir, that's very nice.
And so when I was like, a great word we should put in there that means a lot to a lot of people. But Mike was like, no, it's been bastardized. And one of the last companies we worked for, that was in their value statements. Literally didn't innovate one time. And I was like, no, I think we can innovate. And upon further review, it really has been bastardized. Like you're saying, people taking these buzzwords and just using them because it means stuff to a lot of people. But unless you're actually embodying these values, it's like a visual schedule that you're not using. It's worthless.
Unless you're putting into actions that you're actually doing each day.
And I think that people start with that intent. In all fairness, you and I have one of the, again, to be completely fair to everybody out there, I think everybody has the heart to innovate. That's why you get into this. And then we've had the experience. You start hitting those logistical administrative blockades. And those can very easily steer you into this direction. Like, we have to recommend a certain amount of hours. Oh, and luckily enough, there's some research that supports that number of hours. Now we're not going to look at how individualized this treatment plan is for this client. We're not going to look at the logistics or the fiscal nature of it. Can the parents afford that much time? Can the parents afford that much copay? Again, a million things that now come into play where everybody started with the right mindset. The idea that, here I wrote my goals in this treatment plan this way, and now my treatment plan has been flagged, and now I've got to go through an audit, and now I'm going to write my goals this way to please that funding source versus, wait a minute, who am I providing treatment to, the funding source or this kid? The goals should embody the kid. So we've learned so much in the past year now, over the past 2 years in preparing these things and saying, or me being able to see, okay, I suspected this. Everybody's got good intent. And then all these forces come in. And before you know it, you're providing treatment that appeases administrative policies and rules and regulations. You're now so many degrees away from the actual patient. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to get your opinion on something.
Yeah.
When it comes to innovation. And this actually is a Mike innovation here. So I don't know, Mike, if you want to speak about the innovation that we did and the change that we did on our service delivery as a result of Early Start and taking on Early Start with our previous company maybe 5-6 years ago, and working with kids that didn't have a diagnosis and kind of how that shaped our whole service delivery. I would really be interested in your perspective of that, Matt, both because you said you work primarily with individuals in this age group. You said, I think, 1 to 6, and also being somebody that later had a diagnosis. So, Mike, can you walk him through a little bit about
Sure, and I'll try to be brief because we have to make sure we give him plenty of time for the MFT stuff. I think we got into it a little bit, but I want to make sure we explore that a little bit more. And then thank you for this opportunity, Dan. Basically, in a nutshell, when we started doing early intervention, which has been my bag throughout my career, I'm a developmental psychologist first by training, and then I kind of traipsed into ABA, and it made total sense as a combined force, academically and otherwise. But the idea that we had early intervention, and in me trying to break people out of their comfort zone with the basic Lovaas DTT model. While many of us, you said it earlier, we're not following that model, but the idea that we're moving away from this 3-part contingency, no, that's our bread and butter. So those things still make sense. There are trials.
Yes.
We just know that it doesn't have to happen on an IKEA table and chair for it to work. It can happen anywhere.
Say what?
I know. Sorry. Dan still has a hard time with that. So, so the idea being, okay, in a nutshell, here are these kids, and ABA is sort of synonymous with autism treatment, medically speaking. So we do ABA for these kids that have autism. We're about to do this early start intervention with these younger kids. Now, what's the diagnostic for these kids? Oh, well, they don't have one. Okay, are we going to do the same ABA? Or does it behoove us to look at something different? So if this ABA was for this condition, and this condition doesn't exist over here, it's almost like your childhood experience of, hey, this kid doesn't have ADHD, but this Ritalin stuff works for ADHD. Let's see what happens to. So I sort of posed that question, and it led us all into this greater discussion. And I, again, as a developmentalist, I had a lot of ideas already and saying, how come we're not more, again, I'm going to say a lot of things that I know are going to resonate with you. You're probably already doing them. The idea that I'm saying, what about more child-directed play-based approaches? So then you build that rapport, you do that pairing as you take the child's lead, and then guess what happens? All of a sudden, they know you're there to play with them, so you show up, and they sit right next to you. And then now you can shift into more adult-directed trials. And then it works beautifully. So that's little things like, borrowing from speech language pathologists and things like linguistic mapping or contingent imitation toward reciprocal imitation. Now moving away from our usual do this command, which has been a bane of my existence since the beginning of my ABA career, and going, oh, I know what you guys are trying to do. This just looks weird. Why are we doing it this way? So things like that have really resonated. What was really cool about it is as soon as people started thinking about it, they were then asking, hey, do we just have to limit this to younger kids, or can these techniques be then transferred over to older clients? And I'm like, well, I don't want you to do play, you're not necessarily doing play-based approaches with a 20-year-old, but the idea that you're listening to them first, kind of taking their lead first toward that rapport building and pairing or whatever you want to call it. And then suddenly now you've built enough trust and comfort. Those are hard concepts to measure in ABA, whatever those mean. But the idea that now you've created a comfortable situation so that when you show up, that individual wants to engage with you. And now we've got everything we need to make that interaction. So that's worked very nicely for us in terms of just posing that question and saying, okay, so we do this to treat autism. Now, if you were just looking at any given 3-year-old and the best developmental model that you could give them educationally, it would look like this. How do we put these two things together, knowing that this 3-year-old might be exhibiting behaviors that are different, greater in certain topography, whatever the case may be, than this other 3-year-old, but at the end of the day, they're both 3-year-olds. And, and in this case, we don't even have diagnoses. We just have certain flags developmentally that are saying this kid might use a little more intervention or might use a little bit of help.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, there's a lot there.
Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Wow. There's so much there. Let me think. Okay. So the one thing I wanted to touch on was, you mentioned that, and I think a lot of BCBAs might have a gripe with this about ABA only being used for autism.
Oh, right.
But when you have, it should it be based on the diagnosis, or it works for the funding sources. It works for the even the research. When you look at evidence-based practice, we can align this treatment with this diagnosis here. okay, that's the gold standard for this ABA is gold standard for autism specifically, right?
Yeah.
But when we have kids that don't have that diagnosis, but are still showing supposed developmental red flags, delays, what we want to call it, that don't have that diagnosis yet, then you ask the question, do we change the intervention? Like, what does it look like? How's it going to differ from this intervention, for the autism ABA to early intervention with a child that doesn't have that diagnosis? And I really like the developmental model, looking at it from a developmental standpoint, like the way you look. So that I'm glad you have, that background's probably going to serve you really well. I'm sure it does. But to talk more about the play-based interventions, I love these play-based interventions.
I figured.
I love it. MDBIs are great. I love the ESDM, the Early Start Denver model. Employing that, I do love. I was trained actually by psychologists who really made sure we used them a lot at one of the agencies I worked at. So I was like, I got that I think early in 2018. One of my first jobs, we did train in those. Well, my first job was out of grad school, as a BCBA. She made us learn a lot of those different, the pivotal response treatment models.
Sure.
Jasper model, which is not very popularly used or noticed in ABA, but I really love it. It focuses on that joint attention, symbolic play, engagement,
speaking Mike's language,
all that.
Yeah, and again, that's all for me, the developmental side. That side. So I wasn't familiar with the Jasper model, but it's funny you say joint attention, because that was one of the first things I kicked in and saying, I just want to start doing protocols that make kids look around, because we're showing them stuff behind them, in front of them. The idea that everybody knows a response to name program. Okay, what are we really trying to do there? We're trying to get a kid that's focused on something to listen to their name and then orient their gaze to it.
Yeah.
Wait, but name is just one sound. How come we're not having them turn around to other sounds and then including their name? So again, little nuances, but knowing that I had spent the better part of 10, 15 years.
Every kid could benefit from, not just autism.
I'm showing you something.
Yes, joint attention, right?
Yeah.
Every kid goes through that. Some kids learn it more naturally, but that is a skill that is fundamental for every. It's a pivotal skill. It's necessary for communication, for social relationships, for language. It's such an important, vital skill. Yeah, Jasper stands for joint attention, symbolic play, engagement, and regulation.
I'll be looking it up. Thank you. I can't believe I haven't come across it.
Mike's got his evening lined up now.
Yeah, there's a lot of other ones too. Where was I going? Sorry, I go off track a lot sometimes. But I think that
you were saying you really enjoy the play model.
I do enjoy the play model. I think it's really good for younger kids and older kids too, as long as it's age appropriate, developmentally appropriate.
Sure.
Like you said, you're not going to play blocks with a 20-year-old. I knew some 20-year-olds that would love to do that, but
they're called Legos, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, Lego, right? I was going to say, I'm like,
video games.
Video games.
Yeah.
Yep. I know 30-year-olds that play video games, and I have 20-year-olds that I still play Legos. Well,
sure.
I gotta get back into it. But yeah, so I think individually looking at the person and not tying it so much to a diagnosis. I'm not a big fan of I think a lot of therapists aren't just a fan of like the DSM and the diagnostic labels. It was drilled into me in grad school when I studied counseling psychology. That, we use the DSM for insurance purposes, but
right.
we're not treating a diagnosis, we're treating a person here. To quote Patrick Adams, we are treating a person, not the diagnosis. And the goal is not just symptom reduction; it's how are we going to empower, help them live the lives that they want to live.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I wish we talked more about that in ABA, but we're not just, reducing behaviors or symptoms or even teaching skills for the sake of reducing stuff. Because what we do a lot in ABA is not only behavior reduction, but we also do skill acquisition. But yes, we're building skills, but sometimes the skill acquisition also happens to lower the behaviors and reduce symptoms. But we're also helping, I think, looking at values. I like to do a lot. I tie it back to values. The parents' values, the family's values, the client's values. And sometimes our kids can't tell us exactly what they value yet. Maybe we can see it sometimes we can't, but I want to really make sure that we are not only reducing symptoms, that we're not only meeting goals for the sake of insurance, but we're also helping the family get to where they want. What does their life look? So we ask questions like, where do you see your child in 5 years? Where do you see your child in 1 year? Where do you see yourselves in 5 years as a family? And making sure that the goals tie to those as well, those values, those aspirations. And so that kind of helps decide, okay, what kind of intervention are we going to use? And what is going to look good for the family? what can we do with the family? Like, can we show them, like, this is the model? We're going to do play-based intervention. I really love play-based intervention. It looks natural. Kids are having fun most of the time. You're still teaching skills. And yes, you can incorporate some DTT, which I do enjoy DTT too, because it's easier for me to implement sometimes because it doesn't require as much creativity.
Sure.
No, that's horrible. That's horrible. I'm not trying to insult anyone. I use DTT all the time. It's easier to run. I'll be honest. For me anyways.
Sure.
But you can also have fun running in play-based interventions too.
So the idea that the DTT becomes now, in my opinion, a statistical model to prove that these repeated trials led to new learning versus the way it's supposed to look. So the idea that it's an experimentally controlled, laboratory-based intervention that proved that if you can engage and reinforce a certain number of correct opportunities over a certain amount of trials, learning will happen. So to your point, the idea that we're going to recreate an experimentally controlled setting in somebody's living room, I think is where the problem starts. And then to your point, this is where we have to play. We don't have to prove reinforcement works every time. We've already proven it. So we know that if we can engage, create repeated trials of this behavior that we can deem correct and then reinforce as so that it happens again, means that we can do it if the child is standing on their head. Now, do we want them practicing standing on their head while they read if they're going to do it in school and it's going to cause trouble? No. And then therein lies a whole other episode that we could have with Mr. Matt Tapia about our idea of generalization. And as long as you do it across two different people in three different settings, you've generalized. Well, not exactly. Not exactly. So again, there's a lot of nuance we're discussing here from the point of experimentally controlled, empirically valid results. We're like, oh, that stuff works. And then does that mean that we're replicating that, to a T in somebody's living room? No. Probably not. We're going to run it with a greater margin of error, knowing that it might take us a little longer to get the outcome. But the outcome's been proven. If we do it this way and we run these behavioral techniques, these kids, people that have otherwise diagnostically been deemed in this statistical category, now start demonstrating skills that maybe move them, or I won't even talk about statistics. It maybe improve access and quality of life and all those other things that are hard to measure. So,
I trained, was a trainer in my company for probably 15 years. I trained DTT for a lot of them. I loved it. It was easy. I could run DTT in my sleep because it was so repetitive and structured, and definitely a lot of advantage. But in theory, we would always run it, but for the most part, with the table and the chair, a lot of times with 2D stimuli. But you could even run it with 3D stimuli in different areas, right? Yeah. It's just presenting the trials.
Yeah.
And that's like you mentioned too, that ABA transgresses autism. And I think that's so valid what you said. Mike said earlier, so we have these people that don't have autism. What are we going to do with them? And I think the easy answer is, well, we're still going to do ABA because ABA is irrelevant of autism. However, in practice, I don't know if that is true because we had an episode called Strange Technologies in ABA. Yeah. And we would get this child with autism and we would have, before we even went out we would have the intro visuals. So we would have the choice board and the schedule and the first then strip. And maybe earlier on the IKEA table and chairs. And we would have this idea of what a session would look like before we even really worked with this person because they had autism. And when they have autism, this is what you need to do because they tend to be rigid and you need structure and you need visuals and this is what it needs. So while ABA does transgress, I feel like the way that it was delivered oftentimes was very unique to these individuals with autism and not as individualized and holistic as it could have been.
Well, and I think it was
it wasn't as adaptive.
Well, and very unique to, again, the empirical model, the experimental design, right? So the notion that I have to prove that blue before I can teach you red. Okay. I understand from an experimental control why that's important. Developmentally, that creates a very poor, unenriched environment to learn in if blue is the only stimulus available.
What if you're in Texas and you're a Cowboys fan?
Okay, get out of here.
So Paso, right?
That aligns with something that's important to you. So that's the goal we're going to target.
So Blue Star. Yes, that'll get picked up quickly in Texas and El Paso. Dan.
You bring up my chickens, I'm bringing up your
That's
Cowboys.
right. All right. So before we're doing great on time, but I want to give you plenty of time.
Yes.
And we had the perfect segue earlier. You were talking about family systems and dynamics. We talked a little bit about it off the recording before we started.
Mm-hmm.
You're a double threat, to say the least. We are very big on parent education, and something that's always baffled me is this idea that we know that these parents that we provide this family guidance to, you used that phrase earlier, which is a nice insurance phrase.
Yeah. Yep. Got to use the insurance phrase.
As it is in this country, you get married, you're running a pretty high risk of dissolution and divorce. And I understand, without trying to butcher any statistics, that if you have a child on the spectrum or a child with exceptional needs, that likelihood of divorce increases a good 15 to 20 percentage points, which means that every set of parents we come across, Dan, in terms of having this diagnosis, is running that risk. And while we do provide them family guidance towards challenging behaviors or behaviors that they want to address with their child, what you and I don't have the content expertise on are those family systems and dynamics with regard to marriage,
which comes up
and family
a lot in our groups.
You, Mr. Tapia, do. So please tell us about how that plays out. And again, we're sure that you're not just seeing families with kids that have, or with families that have kids on the spectrum. I'm guessing you're seeing all sorts of people, but I'm also guessing that crossover does happen for you often, and it puts you in a position where you've got super unique content expertise. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The statistics, I don't know the exact number, but yes, they are, parents married that have a child with autism are a lot more likely to divorce. Yes. Right. So knowing that, going in there, right, you want to address the family system as well, not just, so when I bring this up in family guidance, I want to address the whole family as a whole. I want to know, so we got to know more about the family, like who's in the family, who's considered that. You have a lot of families that have grandparents, the most 3-generation families. You have 2-generation families. Well, I guess in defining families is the household, but you have the large families. Small. There's so much to unpack there and learn. I think I will often share with parents, like, yes, you guys are at high risk for divorce, and checking on the relationship. How is for the sake of this child, right? We have to navigate sometimes parents who are already divorced, who are still, co-parenting, who are, which is another can of worms there, right? How are they doing it? Like, are they on the same page? Are they not? Are they communicating? Are they not communicating? What's going on here? There's a lot of tools that we can use in family therapy that, I don't think would be the worst thing to use as an ABA. I'm trying to think, because I don't want to stay on our scope here, but sometimes the family mapping can be a helpful tool, like just saying, okay, who's in the family? Let's map it out. What are the relationships between each member? You use these little lines, a dotted or a crossed off line means that, okay, there's kind of estrangement there, maybe conflict. The solid line, dotted lines. What I'm alluding to is called a genogram, where you can map it out, and we don't need to use a genogram, but we can kind of get an idea of like who's in the family and what's going on inside of it. So often what happens with families, a common pattern you see, there's a few, and I think some of this is on TikTok, which I don't subscribe always to TikTok, but they do get this part right, is sometimes when you have a family with a child with autism and then a family that does not have a child, or has a family that they don't have a diagnosis, sometimes the child that has the diagnosis is going to get more attention. And then they say that the child that doesn't is like, I guess they call it the glass child, which is like the one that's not seen. They're not as seen by the parents because the parents are focusing all their attention on this child.
Yep. We've been trying to get sibling groups for years. We've been trying to figure out because of that. And we've noticed that as some of the siblings get older into the teenagers, they have higher rates of depression and things like that because of a lack of attention. But that's tricky because insurance won't fund any of that stuff. So it would all have to be private pay. But I'm just elaborating. What you said is so valid. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Continue.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Thanks. I appreciate that. So really seeing, and really highlighting that for the families that we work with. So I will point out a lot of this out, like, okay, do you notice this and this? And I usually use it from an ACT model. So I'll ACT is an ADA, so it's covered by insurance. Well, some funding sources, not all, but it's all how you word it, I guess. But using that, like knowing what the family's values are the mom, in some families, they all look different, but are the caregivers, the parents, or the family, I'll use them all interchangeably, I guess they're not, but basically, like, are their values aligned? Do they want the same things for this kid? Do we know what they are? So we're going to do a lot of values work with them. From ACT, you can use the bullseye exercise, which I like from ACT, which is, pinpointing. Oh, there's a word. Pinpointing where you are at your values, what your values are, and then how much your actions are in alignment with your values. So that's a really important part. I think I start with values because that's something that the families can really get behind, because every family has different values. So knowing that, and then pointing out patterns of behavior that are occurring within the family and trying to not change the family, but just to highlight what's going on for them so that they can have that tools, the awareness, and then decide if this is in alignment with their values or not. So I think I highlight a lot of that for them. It's basically just opening, it's like holding a mirror, but then showing them, okay, let's look at it through this lens. Let's look at it through this lens and see what do you guys notice, and where do you guys want to make a change? What kind of steps do you want to take based on what we talked about?
I imagine you confront a lot of differing opinions on the idea of discipline between, say, moms and dads.
100%.
I mean, does that mean that you have to, in terms of that misalignment, does that always mean that you have to convince one or the other to do the same thing? Or alignment just means that, does alignment just mean that they're choreographing enough together that you're going to address the behavior this way and you're going to do it this way, but we're going to be aligned in ensuring that the behavior gets addressed in a way that's constructive? I think that's important for people. In ABA, we're very guilty, back to that generalization piece, and we're going to do the exact same thing across these people, and we're going to make these environments the exact same, and then we sort of falter with that. So I'm sure you have to deal with that a little bit.
Oh, definitely. Actually, the biggest one, it's funny enough, is usually parents. Well, yeah. Okay, I'll try to think of an example here because I'm going to make it clear. So I have an example. I have a parent, right, who will spank their kid, right? And
that's a good topic.
They say, "Oh yeah, I spank my kid all the time when they're acting up. Spank them, right?" And I say, "Well, yeah, you're the parent. That's your right. You can do that." I will say, "We cannot do that," right. And so I will leave that to you, but I'm gonna show you what we do. And but I can say, based on the science, is that we know that our interventions that we're doing that don't involve spanking are effective, right? We know the science, and I can show you other tools, and you can take them, and I help you do. And so I'm not going to tell you not to, but I'm also going to say, these are some things we do, right, and model it for them. So one of my favorite, I shouldn't say, I gotta be careful about saying favorite, but I really like practical functional assessment and skill-based treatment, or PFA and SBT. Love this tool, right? It's great for maladaptive behaviors. So I will often suggest this as an alternative and make it adaptable so that the parents can make it's easy to connect, right? We're not going to take data first. I'm not going to have parents take data on this. Well, sometimes I do, actually. Sometimes I do. But mostly I'm just going to show them what it looks like, right? So I will do the ISCA. I will do the open-ended functional assessment interview, right? And then I'm going to model. I want them in the session while I'm running it. So I'm modeling it for them, doing that BST model, I'm going to model it. I'm going to teach it. I'm going to do power. I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to have you do it. And so surprisingly, a lot of parents will tell me, like, at least I've had a few that do spank their kids, will say, like, how did he not hit you? How is he following your directions? What did you do? What's the magic here? And I'm like, well, what I'm doing, what you're seeing me do. And they're like, but he doesn't do that for me. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have you practice it. Go ahead and do it. Jump in, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not as clean as it was with me, but it goes a lot better than I thought that it would, right? Yeah. Oh, he actually told me he wants his way, my way, or something along those lines. Oh, he actually relinquished his tablet. What? And parents are like, how is this? What's magic are you working? I'm like, okay, well, I could break it down for you scientists, but I need to practice this for a little bit. And they're like, okay, that's usually what gets on board when they can see the results and like do it. And that's where like that rubber meets the road, right? Oh, I'm doing it and it's working. I'm not hitting my kid. I'm not getting angry. They're not angry at me. Wow. That is magic right there. No, it's science.
Yeah. So then talk about parsimony, right? The idea that so you changed what you were doing, mom or dad, and then the behavior changed. Imagine, remember that contingency part I was talking to you? Remember that 3-part contingency I kept talking about? So you changed the A and or the C, and the B changed. Magic, yeah.
Let me piggyback on Mike's question.
Go ahead,
go ahead, Matt.
I'll just say, but they always come back to me, but the speaking works, right? I always get that. It works though. I'm like, well, this works too. And they're like, yeah, but can I do both? I'm like, well, you could, but I mean, but like, okay, how does spanking work? Let me define that. Let's put that in the ABC contingency again, right? Spanking, right? So yeah, it's a positive punisher, right? You're introducing an aversive. Okay, it's going to stop the behavior temporarily, right? You know what else stops behavior temporarily? Reinforcement. Yeah. But so I'll show them those side by side. I mean, they both work, right? But this one works too. I'm like, but which one's easier for you? Which one's the easier one? They're going to say, 9 times out of 10, they say, well, maybe this method might work a little easier. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I live about
and I said
20 minutes from Mike, maybe. I could drive through Phoenix to get to Mike's house. I could take the 10 and that would work. And that's what I would tell to my trainees. Like, that would work. Yeah. I could drive through Phoenix to get to another end of San Diego, but just because it works doesn't mean it's the best option.
Or I take a flight. Get there faster, right?
But I want to piggyback.
Unless, of course, I have flying phobia.
There you go. That exactly. But now we got the ACT.
You're full circle.
We're good.
Yeah.
Nice. Good job, gentlemen.
Just finishing up on Mike's question, though, because I do want to make sure that I have some thoughts that I can bring back to the parent groups that we run, because if Mike's cup of tea is joint attention and the early start, mine has been kind of the parent groups. That's what I kind of hang my hat on. And piggybacking on what Mike said, one of the biggest things that we get consistently, whether it be discipline or not, is my husband or wife does this differently than I do. You told me to do it this way, and I do it that way, but my husband or wife does it differently. And a lot of it's because, well, the other party, I'll just use more of like stereotypical roles, for example. Maybe the mom is there giving more of the caregiving, also doing the ABA therapy, and the dad's at work. And then the dad comes home and has a different way of responding to the kid, different way of following through or not following through. Just their approaches are different. And that can lead to a lot of stress in the relationships. And in the parent groups, a lot of times we do the best we can at offering support, and the parents are just frustrated. My husband always does this, or my wife always does this. And one thing we try to say is it might be okay if you all do things differently. Like, not everybody has to do it the same. Rather than focus on the frustrations, let's figure out if you can get on a common ground, because having two parents that are there and available is going to be better than two parents that are not. But what are your thoughts, and what is your advice to parents that might have different ways of going about it, and that difference is causing one or both parents to get frustrated at not only the child, but the other parent as well?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. That does happen quite a lot, actually, now that I think about it. And yes, like to your point, I think one thing is you got to look at, I always bring it back to this condition, like what's the effect of this behavior, right? So you guys do two different things, right? And from an app lens, we would look at it, okay, is it helpful or unhelpful to work through this, right? Is this something that's worth, okay, let's say, husband, actually, I'm going to bring it back to my mind. Let's make it personal here. My wife and I have a very different way of responding to our daughter. I'm a sucker. I come home, I'm like, hey, cutie pie. I'll tell her, I'll use my words. I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't stop. And I'm like, do this instead. I do throw a lot of ABA out. I mean, what I mean by that is like, my ABA goes to the wayside when it comes to my daughter.
One of our coworkers, husband and wife, both BCBAs, the dad would always say, if the board saw how I responded to my kid and how much I give in, I would lose my certification.
Same. Oh, absolutely. Yes. And my daughter's BCB has to tell me that every time. Like, we should know better than this. But okay, going back to the difference in how we parent, right? I will tell parents, think about this. Like, do you really have the same kind of way you respond to every person in your life? Like, it's normal for parents to have, I won't say normal, but I would say it's very common. I'll use the word common, not normal. I think it's common for parents to have different styles and find a common ground. Yeah. And I think it's not that extreme. Like, we can have different ways of doing things and still align on some of the non-negotiables and finding out what those non-negotiables are, right?
Very well stated.
This is a common, yeah. And I think that does involve a lot of work to get parents to that point because you really want to again, one, I look at their values, where they align in values and where they differ in values, and see if we can try to find a common ground by looking at what are the negotiables and what are the non-negotiables. Is this something that we really need to do, or is this something we can accept through acceptance commitment therapy and let go of, right?
Nice.
And
nice.
Remember what we can control and what we can't control. It's harder to control things when you guys live in separate houses, like they're already divorced. But if they live together, you can choose how you want to respond, right? Is it worth bringing this up to your partner to start to address, right? And it can be healthy to address those things, right? Like, hey, this is a difference that you do. I think an example here. Okay, so, I'm going to get personal here because I want to bring it up to my someone. I have a daughter with autism, right? Me and my wife disagree fully on how we agree a lot in some ways. We have a lot of common ground in a lot of areas, but one area we disagree is potty training.
Okay,
that is a big one. Me, I want to take the approach of like, let's just get it all with. We're going to teach her how to do potty training, right? My wife takes the approach of, she's not ready yet. Who wins in that? The answer is the wife.
Of course,
the wife.
Good
right?
man.
So
Good man.
Wins.
That goes a lot toward maintaining your marriage, sir.
Exactly.
There can be one loser or two losers.
There can be one loser or two losers.
So I will take the loss there, right? For the sake of my value of maintaining my marriage.
Good man. Good man.
Right? So I think that's a big point is like, okay, is this marriage important to you? What's important about it? What's the value there, right? And yeah, sometimes you find common ground and other times you can't. And if those times you can't, then you gotta ask what's really important here. Is it this point or this point? Is the relationship more important, or is it this one sticking point of where we disagree? Yeah. I chose freely. I'm going to value my marriage because even though it goes against everything, I don't agree with the approach at all. My dog's still in pull-ups. That's another thing. But, we're dragging our feet on it. But I will support my wife in that, even though it's hard for me because I value the marriage.
I mean, back to your point, if I'm understanding correctly, without that acceptance and/or commitment on her part, you guys are creating a conflict, or you'd be walking into a misalignment, if you will. And I know I'm not using the right language, but I think that's great. Now, to your point, I would also say, a dad in your position, now you're not going to go through this formal training, but the idea that you can't take the time to then talk to your daughter, begin to expose your daughter to the discussion about potty training, that should be okay, right? Within some discussion. So I really like the way you pitched that, because it is that, again, it was my underlying point that I was hoping you'd make when you did very beautifully, which is that sometimes alignment to us means replication. Like we're going to become the exact same people saying the exact same things in response to our kids. And I think we're guilty of that across RBTs or an ABA program. It's like, no, every person's going to do it their own way. We might use the same stimuli. We might adopt common language, but the idea that we're going to replicate the exact protocols across two people, across environments, sure, it's possible. Those are called experimentally controlled settings for replication. Life might work a little differently. So I think there's room to wiggle around between those two extremes.
So parenting is also both a person and a service?
Ooh.
Yes.
That's on the next ABA on tap.
Paradoxes. Yes. It's the, as Brene Brown would say, the power of and rather than or.
Yes.
You can have this and this.
Thank you, Dan.
Oh, no, we can't end on that.
We're ending on that. Dan loves to send me the this or that questions on messaging, and usually my answer is yes. Usually my answer is yes. He hates it. We're ending on that. That's it. We're ending on that.
We are ending on that.
Matt, anything we didn't cover? As we suspected at the beginning of this conversation, we covered 2 hours pretty darn easily. Sir, you're a wealth of knowledge. You're a wealth of experience, both personally and professionally. We can't thank you enough for your time today and sharing everything you did. Anything else that you want to plug? You want people to find you? You want people to not find you? Don't say anything. But they're going to hear you here. We got a pretty good listenership, so they're going to hear you. Yeah, I'll leave it to you. Anything else you want to cover?
I don't really have a plug that I wanted to. No, I don't really have one. I don't have anything to necessarily plug. Yeah, but if you, I guess you could find me. I don't really have social media for the reason of mental health. I deleted all social media.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
I guess you can find me with the exception of LinkedIn. I think that's the only one I have still active. So you could find me on LinkedIn by typing in my name, Matt Tapia.
Okay.
Or I'm on Psychology Today.
Oh, that's right. So they can find you for a referral if somebody hears you here and thinks you can help. Okay, good.
Oh, I can help. Then yeah.
That's kind of what we're after. Is somebody can use your help. We would like them to find you and see if that connection can be made. Sir, we can't thank you enough. I'm sure that we will find a good excuse to bring you back on here in future episodes.
All right. Want to wrap it up with
Thank you.
We have to wrap it up. I always forget. We do a little synopsis here at the end here. So we're saying, Dan, you're going to have to help me here.
All right. So use ACT or act appropriately.
So accept, commit, right?
Yep. Accept, commit, incorporate the family.
Incorporate the family and always analyze responsibly. Cheers, Matt. Thank you,
Cheers. Sir. Yep.
Always analyze responsibly.
ABA on Tap is recorded live and unfiltered. We're done for today. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time.